Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So if you or someone you know is navigating the Ontario high school system right now, you might have noticed a pretty massive shift in the course calendar lately. A specific class is actually replacing the traditional grade 11 English course for a vast majority of students. You've probably seen it by its course code, NBE3U. Today, we're going to decode this entire curriculum. We're going to look right under the hood and unpack exactly what this course is, why it was implemented, and what students are actually doing day to day in the classroom.
Okay, let's dive right into this by addressing the elephant in the room. This is by far the most common question, and honestly, sometimes a point of skepticism that students and parents have about this new compulsory credit. Because the course focuses so heavily on Indigenous perspectives, treaties, and historical policies, a lot of people take one look at the syllabus and ask, wait a second, is this an English class or a history class? It's a completely valid question, and the answer to it really shapes how we need to understand this whole curriculum shift. So, here is our roadmap for today. 1. A new English credit. 2. Meeting grade 11 requirements. 3. Core themes and objectives. 4. The 5 curriculum strands. And finally, 5. Assignments and student perspectives. Let's get to it.
Section 1. A new English credit. The shift in Ontario's curriculum. Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand that this isn't just some optional elective. This is a major, system-wide programming shift rolling out across high schools in Ontario. It was intentionally designed to introduce dynamic, contemporary voices right into the mandatory curriculum.
So what does the acronym NBE3U actually stand for? It's English, Understanding Contemporary First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Voices. It is offered at the university preparation level alongside college and workplace equivalents. And according to the Ministry of Education, the primary goal here is to develop literacy, critical thinking, and communication skills. How are they doing that? Through the rigorous study of literary, informational, and media texts created entirely by Indigenous authors. It's really all about developing a deep appreciation for the absolute wealth and complexity of Aboriginal writing.
Section 2. Meeting grade 11 requirements. Does this count as English? This brings us to the absolute core academic question for anyone trying to plan out their high school graduation and university prep.
When you compare traditional grade 11 English, which is ENG3U, to NBE3U, it's pretty clear how they stack up academically. Both courses explicitly require the exact same grade 10 academic English prerequisite. There's no difference there. And most importantly, the credit earned for NBE3U is officially designed to meet the grade 11 English compulsory credit requirement. It rigorously prepares students for their mandatory grade 12 English course. So functionally and academically speaking, yes, this is grade 11 English.
Section 3. Core Themes and Objectives. The Intellectual Engine. Now, since the source material isn't exactly Shakespeare or Dickens here, the curriculum requires a completely different thematic framework to analyze these texts properly.
What's really interesting is that 3 central concepts pretty much anchor everything in this course. I mean, every novel, every essay, every single media task connects back to these themes. First up, identity. This means examining cultural and legal identification and how individuals actually see themselves. Second is relationships. This is looking at the interconnectedness of all living things, familial ties, and natural law. And third, self-determination, sovereignty, or self-governance. This involves analyzing massive themes like nation-to-nation relations, land claims, and cultural revitalization. Basically, whenever students are reading any text in this class, they're filtering it through these 3 specific lenses.
But hold on a second. What exactly is a text in this course? Well, the curriculum broadens that definition significantly. Students study what are called cultural text forms. This is officially defined as any form of communication that embodies cultural meaning and is passed across generations. So it forces students to analyze forms way beyond your standard printed paperbacks. They might be looking at Anishinaabe birch bark scrolls, Inuit throat singing, known as Katijak, Haudenosaunee wampum belts, or Tsimshian button blankets. The key takeaway here is that these aren't viewed just as arts and crafts. They're treated as foundational texts with deep communicative, spiritual, and sometimes even legal significance.
Section 4. The 5 curriculum strands. How the course is built. Let's move on and look at the actual architecture of the class, using the 5 official strands established by the Ministry of Education.
Let's see how this builds a truly rigorous academic environment. If you look at the writing expectations from the curriculum, it's clear students aren't getting a free pass. They still have to generate ideas, draft, revise, and apply strict grammar conventions.
They're out there writing standard literary essays, expository reports, and utilizing highly structured paragraph formats exactly like they would in any traditional university prep English class.
Next up is the oral communication strand. Again, we're seeing standard English curriculum objectives here, listening to understand and speaking to communicate for different audiences and purposes. But it's actually fascinating to note that the very first expectation is literally the oral tradition. Students are mastering these standard communication skills specifically through the rich lens of indigenous traditions. They're learning culturally appropriate listening practices and analyzing how meaning is conveyed through reiterative storytelling.
So the absolutely crucial point here is how the curriculum weaves all of this together. Your standard English courses generally have 4 strands: oral, reading, writing, and media, right? But NBE3U introduces a 5th strand, Strand A, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit perspectives and text forms. The curriculum explicitly points out that while Strand A is presented separately on paper, in practice, it's the lens for all the other strands. Students are continuously applying this cultural and thematic knowledge as they write those essays, read those novels, and give those presentations. It's the foundation of the whole shebang.
Section 5. Assignments and Student Perspectives, the Reality of the Classroom. So what does the day-to-day actually look like? And how are students really responding to this major curriculum shift?
The grading structure itself really highlights the academic rigor we've been talking about. Just like traditional English, 70% of the mark is term work, and 30% is a final evaluation, which is often split evenly between a culminating activity and a final exam. Throughout the term, students are heavily evaluated on their ability to construct clear, cohesive arguments. They write formal literary essays complete with thesis statements, they construct peel paragraphs, point, evidence, explanation, link, and they frequently create original presentations like a TED Talk, which requires intense research and highly structured communication.
Now, a curriculum shift of this magnitude is inevitably going to prompt varied reactions. It's just a reality. To impartially report on the student experience, take this quote gathered from an online forum, where a student expressed some real frustration over the mandate. The student wrote, "I'm in grade 11 and have been forced to take NBE3U. It doesn't feel like English, and the only thing we learn is the sob stories, how they have generational trauma." This clearly highlights a perspective from some students who feel that the heavy historical and trauma-focused content strays way too far from their expectations of what a standard English class should be.
To balance that perspective, we can look at the educational rationale that's actually provided to educators and tutors for the course. A tutor preparation guide for NBE3U explicitly states, students in NBE3U are not history students, but they cannot engage deeply with indigenous literature without understanding the historical context. So, from an educational design standpoint, understanding things like the Indian Act, the residential school system, or the 60 Scoop is deemed an absolute prerequisite. You simply cannot perform high-level literary analysis on texts dealing with identity and resilience if you don't understand the historical forces those characters are navigating. It's like a giant puzzle. You need all the pieces to see the full picture. And the texts they're analyzing? They are incredibly rich. While reading lists definitely vary from school to school, extremely common assignments include acclaimed contemporary novels like Indian Horse, Moon of the Crusted Snow, and The Marrow Thieves by Métis author Cherry de Malin. Actually, if you're looking for an amazing read yourself, The Marrow Thieves is a brilliant dystopian YA novel about a future where indigenous peoples are literally hunted for their bone marrow. It allows students to analyze core literary elements like figurative language and narrative voice, all while deeply exploring those central course themes of intergenerational trauma, identity, and found family.
Well, that brings us to the end of our explainer today. We've seen that NBE3U absolutely maintains the rigorous reading and writing standards of grade 11 English, but it fundamentally changes the vehicle used to deliver those skills. So I want to leave you with this final thought to reflect on. If the definition of literature is suddenly expanded to include wampum belts, throat singing, and dystopian fiction, how might exploring those incredibly diverse cultural text forms alter and expand your own reading, writing, and critical thinking skills? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep learning.